Hey everyone, it's Angela Stevens with the podcast Refocus with Angela. I am so excited to talk to our guest today. I already think he's amazing, and I've just had a few minutes with him. You probably know him, you might have heard him, but he's going to bring to you a great sense of some ideas of how to help you get through whatever you're going. But I'm going to introduce him really quickly. His name is Eric Tivers. He is a licensed clinical social worker. He's a coach. He's a podcaster. He's a speaker. He's a consultant. He's an entrepreneur. He specializes in working with ADHD adults primarily. You can check out his website at ADHDrewired.com. He is the host of ADHDrewired.com. What did I miss in that? Excuse me. Cut that, Andrew. What did I miss with that, Eric? Did I get everything?
It sounds good to me. It sounds, it fits.
Oh, awesome. Well, I could go on and on and on, and that's what's so cool about you. So first of all, I got to know, everybody might have been listening to you before, but what do you specialize in? So, you were talking to me a lot about different classes that you have, different ideas that you're working on. Tell us, if nobody's listened to your podcast before, we're going to put a link on there, but why should they listen to you, and what do you cover?
So we really look at adult ADHD primarily through the lens of talking with other adults with ADHD. One of the things that ADHD Rewired really does is we help people learn, grow, and connect through community. So we believe so powerfully that community and bringing people together and having people hear their own story through somebody else telling their story is so powerful. There was one thing to be working with a coach or a therapist or reading, books on ADHD and feel like, okay, this person, like they kind of understand it, or, oh, that sounds a lot like me. There's another feeling of when you're actually in community with other people who are like you, right? And so that's really what we do. We bring people together to learn, grow, and to connect. We try to normalize a lot of the challenges we have. I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown's work, and we talk a lot about shame and vulnerability. It's so we do a lot of stuff around productivity and planning, goal setting, and that kind of stuff. But like we can't skip the stuff around goal setting and time management and planning if we're not also addressing big time stuff around shame and vulnerability.
And just the day-to-day issues. If you have ADHD, it can be a struggle, and you're talking to somebody that knows all about that. We have that in common. Both Eric and myself have ADHD. When did you find out that you had ADHD?
So I was officially diagnosed when I was 19 after I almost failed out of college. After my first year, my freshman year of college, my first semester, I got a 2.2.
Mhm.
And my parents said to me that if you don't get those grades up, you are coming home and going to community college.
I
So
think
I
I
was
had
like,
that same
hell,
conversation with my
hell
parents.
no. Like I am like, I love being away from home. So second semester, I decided to open up more books than I was beers and got a 1.8.
I love that statement. Can I write that down? Open up more books than beers. You should really
Yes.
promote that. I love that. No, it's so interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day, and there's this theory that parents, and I'm the same. I can't say that I haven't thought of it. And we've had counselors after counselors that say parents will say, my kid struggled with ADHD, but I'm going to send him to college. He's going to grow up and he's going to make it and he's going to be good. That doesn't always happen, does it?
I would say probably usually not.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that, we know that ADHD, the developmentally, the brain's about 3 years delayed. So,
Yes.
like, if you're a parent, would you think about sending your 15-year-old to college? Right,
Yes.
probably not,
Yeah.
right? And I felt, I was very fortunate that I was able to get a second chance at that, going back to school. Because one thing that we also know people with ADHD can
Shout
do
out to your
is
parents on that one, right?
well, we also know that we can be very convincing and persuasive. My mom always said I should have been a lawyer. Um, but looking back at that, so after like truly spending a lot of time in the library that semester and doing worse than I did first semester, I knew something was wrong. Like I realized I wasn't retaining what I was reading. And then I happened to have this chance. This is such an ADHD story. I had this chance. I think it was a date with this girl who I can't remember who it even
What's her
was.
name? And we'll
I
get her
don't
on here.
know. I don't. I've actually a long time ago put a call on my podcast saying, if you are this person, would you please reach out to me because I want to thank you because I don't remember who you are. But she was telling me that she has ADHD and she was describing it to me, and it was like this, those moments that just like you get goosebumps because it's just like, oh my god, the like that is me, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the one of the things that she was describing to me that like where I knew like, oh my gosh, was she'd be reading and whatever she was reading would trigger a thought, and that thought would trigger two more thoughts, and those two thoughts would trigger four more thoughts. And now she's still reading, and I was like, that's been my life experience
Hmm.
for as long as I can remember. Right.
Yeah.
So, because I would, I'd read the 20 pages required reading, and I have no idea what I read, but I'm like, but I did the reading. Right. And so that was one of the big things. So I went that very first week back at school. I'm like, oh my, I know that if I don't get it up this time, I actually will be coming home because I had some grant money that was if I had a third semester in a row like that, I was going to lose all that grant money. And I was
Or
going
pay it
to
back.
private school, and so
Yeah.
it was like that was a pretty significant financial loss if I didn't get it up.
Hmm.
So I went that very first week when I was back at school and made an appointment with my the school psychiatric services and got an evaluation. And I remember the doctor saying like, "How are you not identified as like you are off the charts inattentive ADHD?"
Right.
And
Yeah.
how not because like a lot of women too, it's like when you're inattentive, like you're not really disruptive. You're not like I maybe was a bit impulsive. I didn't really have that hyperactivity
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
So got the diagnosis, started taking medication. I so still vividly remember that very first day I took medication in my sophomore year. I was in my college room, and I'm reading this book. I was a sociology minor, and I was reading this book is called Crested Kimono. It was about the Japanese business family, and I remember getting to this end of this chapter and sitting in my room on my creaky like $4 chair that I got from Goodwill, and just started bawling because I knew what I
Wow.
had just read.
Wow.
And it was, I really look at life. There was life before that moment and life after that moment. I
Yeah.
didn't even realize that my head was in such a cloud
Yeah.
of just like noise. And it's
Yeah.
because it's all I ever knew. And that opening scene to The Simpsons where the clouds just kind of clear?
Hmm.
That's kind of what it felt like. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like it's actually possible to just have one thought at a time. Like this shit's
Yeah.
amazing.
You and I could talk forever about this because I remember sending my son. I didn't want to give him medication for a long time. Not that we're advocating for that, but I didn't want to. But I saw the difference going from a D to an A,
Yeah.
and he was really struggling. I kind of felt like I kept him from getting better because I didn't know at the time. So, and by the way, Eric, Eric and I have something else in common. So we were both diagnosed at high levels on the spectrum, right? Were you
Mhm.
high on there? I was high
Yeah.
on,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
was high. Yeah. So I get that. But I want to bring something up. You just mentioned something about going to college, right? And not doing well. We're right smack dab in the college year going
Mhm.
into it. Tell me, do you have any advice for students or college parents that are sending their kids away because it's a challenging time?
Yes. If you want to waste your money, go after the thing that pays you a lot of money. If you want to make a good investment, go after the thing you love. Because
I
with
Amen to
ADHD,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, I look at, for neurotypical folks, people who are right in the middle of that neurological bell curve,
Hmm.
those
Yeah.
the normies, right?
Yeah.
Like they can
Yeah,
they can do
exactly.
they can do the 9 to 5, right? And
Hmm.
they can do the job that pays the bills, does all right, and
Yeah.
not be interested in it.
Yeah.
As people with ADHD, we don't have that luxury. Like our brain will not operate if
Yeah.
we are not interested in what we are doing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Many people know when I was diagnosed at 45, and I actually hired an ADHD business coach, and it was the best money I ever spent
Yes.
with, because it helped me. It just helped me. It's the best money you can ever spend. So that's good advice. But what about to the parents? Like, when the parents think they're going to send their kids off and they're going to be okay. What can the parents do? Number one, and number two, I did have a question. Did you have a 504 or an IEP?
I actually did have an IEP, but it wasn't for ADHD. Like it was there's a I think it's for a learning disability, for like a math learning disability, and
Yeah.
I think something,
Hmm.
and like that. it's questionable if that the math issues definitely were there, like
Yeah.
the math learning disability. I actually
Yeah.
realized when I was starting my business that I have dyscalculia, which is a type of dyslexia with numbers, and I
Yeah.
only
Which
realized
is
that.
so common with so
Oh
many
my
kids,
gosh.
right? Yeah. Mhm.
And it's like, of course, now I know why it took me 3 tries to getting through college algebra, because it was like, because I was
Mhm.
swapping numbers like all day long,
Yeah.
because I only realized that when I started my business and I was entering credit card numbers in on the credit card machine, and it kept saying invalid number, invalid number. So I had my wife at the time. I'm
Wow.
divorced. I had my wife at the time. Like, we just watch it undoing, and she goes, "You keep swapping those numbers." And I found, especially if there's a pattern like a 3557. I will input it as 3577, and I will do that like 5 times in a row.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah. That's so common and people don't even realize. I know my son went in to go into engineering. That's a lot of math
mhm,
classes, right? And he was good, but he had a hard time keeping up
yeah,
because that's
yeah.
intense. That's intense class
So,
or math classes.
the other sort of, like, I guess, tips or advice
Yeah.
for parents and for students is one, it's all right to take a year or two off to work. Like, let the brain develop, right? I think that is okay.
So
I
true.
think
Mhm.
it is okay to start at community college, right? Get those gen eds that you're going to have to take. Like, why risk screwing those up when it costs a lot of money? Like, screw them
Yeah.
up when it doesn't cost a lot of money, right? Like,
Yeah.
if it's going to
And it's
happen,
a
like,
growing time. It's a
yes,
growing time. And it's the patterns. I think there's a lot about that, about helping, you work with adults, but I'm sure a lot of those adults are trying to help their kids, right? And getting ready for school. And just the little things of brushing your teeth, remembering your backpack, things like that, whether they're in high school or
mhm.
elementary, it continues. So if you get them in a good pattern, it helps them.
Yeah, I think too, looking at small schools, the allure of the big schools, might seem fun, but
They have a
like,
lot
yeah,
of
and
beer.
and you're gonna find a party no matter what the size of the school is,
Mhm.
right? And the social piece should be a part of
Mhm.
the college experience,
Mhm.
right? But finding us where I went to Bradley University, a little private school, 6,000
Yeah.
students, and in Peoria, Illinois, and like my average class size was 25 students.
Yeah, I went to a private college. It was best, so good for me.
Yeah, so it was great. Other things too, like, build relationships with your professors. This is probably one of the most important things I work with people on, is who are in college or in if they're in grad school, is, because here's the thing, like, even if you have the ADA accommodations
Yeah.
and whatnot, like, your professor is the person who gives you a grade. Yes,
Mhm.
that grade is based on the scores and the grading rubrics that they've created, but they ultimately put those points in there.
Yeah.
So if you have been showing up, if you have been building a relationship, talking with your professors, and by the way, most professors, they say their favorite thing is when students actually come to their office hours, right?
Mhm.
So go to their office hours, talk
Mhm.
to them, ask for the accommodations you need. All through my 5 years of college, it took me 5 years to finish. Um, I don't
That's
think I
crazy.
actually wrote for all my papers, because I struggled with writing. Um, I renegotiated every paper assignment I was ever given to make it something that I was more interested in. It was
Wow.
one of the most
I
probably
love your
powerful things
honesty
that I
on
did.
that because that's really, it's vulnerability. We don't want to show people that we're struggling, right? Until it comes out that we have ADHD. We don't want anyone to know that. So I think that's great. I think that's great advice. I
And,
really, really do.
and let me kind of zoom out a little bit, because this is actually part of my research when I was in grad school, that I wrote my dissertation on,
Yeah.
and part of this was informed by me learning that I had ADHD in college. Was like this. So, look, we can't change what we're not aware of. So, self awareness. This is where this all starts. We
Mhm.
have to learn about ourselves, learn about our ADHD, learn what our strengths are and how to use them, learn what our challenges are and how to accommodate them, right? Learn how other people perceive us,
Mhm.
right? Because it's not
Mhm.
just like how we know ourselves, but like, is that part of how we know ourselves, is that also being reflected on how other people see us? Because if not, that's not actual self awareness,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's a
And there's
distorted view of
support.
self.
There's support out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So self awareness, self advocacy skills. So seeking what you need, knowing how to ask for what you need, No, like look, like no, the truth is, whether it's in academics or the working world, nobody gives a shit that you have ADHD, right?
Right.
People want you to get the job done, right?
That's,
As your
or you're
employer,
going to
or
get fired.
that's
Exactly.
that's
Yep.
right. So you have to kind of figure out, how do I still meet the demands of my, whether it's my teachers
Yeah.
or my employers, right? How do I make that business profitable, or how do I help really deliver the social cause of the business, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if I need accommodations, how do I explain to the company, the organization, the school, that what I need is going to benefit them? And you often don't need to even disclose you have ADHD. You can say, I work best in a quiet space.
Yeah.
I work best when I can do, X, Y, or
Because
Z.
they're there to help you.
That's right.
They are. It's interesting. When I had my son going to school, we were talking about this on my last podcast. I was in a big room of parents. It was a big university. And I asked the professors, how much do you want to hear from the parents?
None. Probably.
None,
Right. They don't want to hear from you.
none. And I went, okay, I need to back off and not do anything. And that did not help. Right. So let's take that example. Let's say I'm the parent in the room and I go, okay, I'm going to back off. I'm going to let my son take it from there. Is that the best choice, or what does the parent do?
You know, the first thing is, does your growing young adult student know that they need help, right? With ADHD, like you need accountability. Like it is, when people say, I want to, I got to hold myself accountable. I'm like, wait, you have ADHD? That doesn't work that way, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to use my calendar to hold myself accountable. Like,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, buddy. Like, you have ADHD. Like, you actually need another person.
exactly.
That other person, like 99 out of 100 times, should not be a parent,
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
right? Like,
I've hired my son a coach many times, and yeah, get the right one.
right. And so it's, and the other thing too is,
Yeah.
instead of making sure that your kid's making the right choices all the time, help make sure that they believe that they will learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
Know that they're going to make mistakes, and say,
Yeah.
I still believe in you. And I think you're going to figure this out. Oop, that didn't go the way you were hoping to. Like, you don't need to even tell me, but just think about what are some things maybe you can try differently, and see what happens next time.
Yeah.
Right. And so really encouraging that the process of iteration, like, don't give them the solutions, like ask them questions to think, and tell them they don't need to give you the answer.
And just support them. Just
Yeah.
support them. That's it. We did, I think it's our third or fourth, we have 63 out, but on our third or fourth episodes, we have what it's like having ADHD in college. And that was an interview with my son. As a parent, it broke my heart. And as a professional, I was profound with his insight. So that's amazing. So, so moving on, I want to ask you a little bit of a few personal questions.
Sure.
So how did you get to where you are today? I'm a recruiter. I've got 3 businesses. People know this, but how did you get to this place?
Well, I started in college as a communications and advertising major, and I flunked most of those classes. So well, I was always interested in that. I switched to social work. So I'm going to fast forward through that.
Yeah.
I I have some, and I've gotten a lot better, but I still have some pretty significant workaholic tendencies.
Yeah.
So
I do that too. You work all the time, right? And it's hard
Mhm.
on the spouse, right?
I mean, it's hard on a lot of things. It's like you can do great in certain areas, and then like all the other areas are a dumpster
We're
fire,
not
like it's a shit
perfect.
show, right? It's like,
We're not perfect.
so, and here's the first ADHD moment of totally forgetting where I was going with that thought.
No, no, you're totally fine. I said, how did you get there? Right. And you went to college, and we were
Okay,
talking
got it,
about,
got
oh
it.
yeah, got it. Okay.
So when I was in grad school, I decided I was going to focus in school social work
Yeah.
for 2 reasons. One, that provides a natural break, just because it would kind of provide that counterbalance of, okay, I'm going to work my ass off during the 3 quarters of the year, and then holy shit, the teachers have like a pretty there's in the school system, there's a lot of bad things about it, but the vacation is sweet, right?
Yeah.
You get a lot of time off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Turns off I hated working in the schools. I got fired from my first internship because I didn't read the politics of the school kind of correctly. I was just going by my code of ethics and doing what I was supposed to do based on like the training that I was provided. And I got thrown under the bus by an administrator. And I mean, it was just like I was like, wow, like these are
I'm in the real world.
yeah. So, and then I had a second internship. It was fantastic. It was in Chicago Public Schools. So my part of my focus was on autism because at the time I was working with kids with autism, and I loved it and I was fascinated by it. And so my first internship had a autism program, and so like and I got my number one program, right?
Awesome.
But I was fired from it. So my second program,
So what we're saying here is Eric's got a great background. No, just
no, I
kidding.
mean, and that's the thing
But
too. It's
it's the
like
journey. It's
I
the
want
journey
people
that
to
you went
know
on.
absolutely like
Yeah.
and and I'm honestly I'm glad it happened because it while painful at the time, like it taught me what I needed to learn, right? So the second internship was at a Chicago public school that had a big focus on the fine arts, and I'm also a musician, and
And which is another great outlet for people with ADHD. What do you
Mhm.
play?
My main instrument is piano and keyboards.
Can you play anything else?
Yeah, I play guitar a bit. I really anything I can get my hands on, I can play.
I love
I
that.
play by ear.
I was gonna say, did you take lessons or by ear?
Well, not really. Like I for maybe when I was like 5 for like a year, but I never wanted to practice what I was being taught. So I faked being able to read music because I could just like hear it once
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
play it, right? So I got the second internship. The social worker that I was working with was working on her PhD using joint attention with using music with kids with autism. So it was like perfect for me, right? And we were doing this service learning project where I was teaching seventh and eighth grade students who had learning disabilities. Some we call it social norms marketing, right?
Hmm.
So it's like actually doing these school surveys. It's to kind of do some myth busting of actually no most students don't drink, most students don't do drugs, right?
Right.
Because they
Right.
often think they
Different
do,
generation too. Hmm.
right? And so it's by doing these surveys, and most students think they do, and then when they do their own self report, and we report on the self report, it's like, oh, actually most actually do not use, and they created this really awesome bulletin board by their classroom on there's a
Wow.
3-story building, and the principal calls me in, and this principal was wonderful, right? Like, and my first day there,
Yeah, I love
she did a
it.
10-minute guided meditation to prep the students for state testing. I was like, where am I? Like, this is amazing, right? She
That
came
is,
in,
where was that?
it was in Chicago Public Schools at a school called Agassiz.
Wow.
And so she brought me in, and she was this principal was also a great teacher. She was aware of my previous situation at my last the previous school where I was fired from. And she's like, all right, so I think what you did was amazing. I love what you taught these students. I think the bulletin board they created is just fantastic. And we have a parent who's a really big donor to our arts program who doesn't like it. And here's the reality of how these kinds of schools work, right?
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, I hate it. Like, I hate that where I'm going to tell you right now is we need to take it down. And I hate that I'm telling you that. But like, this is
No,
how
it's
these kids
reality.
operate. Yep. And I was like, I just appreciated so much how she approached that with me,
Hmm.
right? And it was at that moment I'm like, I cannot work in schools because I don't have the ability to bite my tongue very well. So because it's like I see an issue and I'm like that's stupid. Like tell that parent to like, well, this is evidence based and like where's your background in education? It's
You
like,
know,
but that's not the way the world works.
it's not the way the and with my son, and we have a company called Refocus Creative Office. I started creating products that did not exist because I wanted to help him. And as parents, we love our kids and we really want the best for them, but we lose our patience and we lose our cool. So we're trying to figure out ways to stay calm.
Yes. So continuing the story here. So I was working at a private behavioral clinic with kids with autism. Really enjoyed the work. My wife at the time, we just signed the mortgage on our first home on a Monday, and on that Friday I was laid off.
Okay, I'm a recruiter. How many times was this? I can't, it was
Was
there. I
there a
couldn't help it.
pattern? Right. No. So I had just recently got my clinical licensure,
Yeah.
and so it was going to cost them more to keep me employed.
Yeah.
And
And
they
you want to be, you don't want to be there. You want to be where you want to be and where
and so
your
I had always wanted to
destiny
start my
is.
own practice. Like that was
Yeah.
always a goal of mine. It wasn't necessarily at that particular moment, but the moment that I was laid off, I literally on my drive home, I started making phone calls and networking, and like literally, like I was basically starting my practice on the drive home. 6 months later, I had my very first client. 6 months after that, I had a full practice, and I was
Oh, wow.
focusing on clinically autism and ADHD.
Would you say at the very beginning of the show, you said, do what you love,
Hmm.
right? And it will come, right? It will come.
Yes.
And you're an example of that. And so am I. It's a labor of love, but we know that we're helping people out there. And that's our passion. It's not about money. It's not about the business. It truly is making sure that people get to a better place,
Yes. And
right?
so, yeah, and part of it too is like I loved the work. It also helped me like I'm continuing to learn about myself um and so
Hmm.
yeah, I loved what I'm doing. And I also so in working with kids with autism, I've learned that how expensive the lifetime sort of treatment can be. Um, and when my son was about 6 months old, I knew something was different, and I suspected he might be on the spectrum.
Wow.
And everyone was saying, "Oh, you're just you're just looking into that. Like it's like not everyone has a diagnosis." I'm
Mm.
like, mm-mm. I'm like 6 month olds don't look at books for half an hour, right? Or like just all these different things like that I was just I knew because of my training and my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And so we got him evaluated, and when we did this whole it was a several a couple days sessions at the Center for the Childhood Brain in Illinois, and the lead doctor comes back at the end and says, there are certain kids who we'll evaluate and we'll say, we're not really sure. Maybe you should come back in like 6 months to a year and we'll reevaluate. But your son's not one of those kids. And I just remember that moment. I just got like tunnel visions. I didn't hear a word she said after that. Like I was hoping that everyone who was telling me that I was just like reading into it and it's not actually there. Like I was hoping they were right.
Wrong.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Or, yeah.
I was hoping I was wrong. It was in that moment I decided like I need to do something bigger than what I'm currently doing because I don't want a lack of resources to be anything that limits what I can provide for my son. So I had on my dry erase board at home, I had this mind map of some of my sort of my goals and my visions that I had for the next several years. And I had it had been on the whiteboard for so long that it ghosted the word podcast. It was literally on there for 3 years. I wanted to start a podcast because I struggle with writing, but I can talk for hours. Like I would honestly rather give a 6 hour presentation than a 20-minute presentation. The
Right.
20-minute presentation sounds overwhelming because I have to be so concise and to the point, right?
Yeah.
Like I
You
like
and
it.
I are like twins, I
I,
think, because I mean, honestly, we get it. And the thing is that it's a journey. And
yeah.
and it didn't stop. We're continuing that journey.
Yeah. So, I started learning about podcasting and then I made the decision right after my son was born, like, I'm going to start a podcast. I didn't have a grand vision that I'm going to start this podcast and then I'm going to market and create these coaching groups that I'm going to create. Like it was so organic. Angela, when I first had the idea of these coaching groups that I now do, I actually like talked about it completely impulsively on a recording. I was just sort of thinking out loud about an
Thinking,
idea.
would this work? Is this a good idea?
And
Right.
and
Yeah.
for the next like 8 weeks, I kept saying, I'm gonna have more information about this next week. And like I kept trying to figure stuff out. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be harder than I thought it was gonna be. Right.
Mhm.
And then I finally got my first group off the ground, and that was in September of 2014. And then I did another one, and then it filled up really fast. I'm like, could I do two of these? Like, I can do two of these. So I did two, and then after a couple of rounds of those started filling up really fast. Then I'm like, could I do three of these? I'm like, if I do three, I need to start cutting my
And you have
clinical
to
work.
manage that time because something's got to give, right?
Right. So I ended up making the decision
Yeah.
to close my clinical practice and
Hmm.
focus completely on the coaching because one, I loved it. Two,
Hmm.
I was seeing growth like I had like because I had done some intensive one-on-one work doing coaching with clients, and there was nothing even came close to the growth that I was seeing in group. Like group is magical, Angela. It is because it's not
Listen, it is people
yeah.
coming together for the common good of helping each other.
And one of the things that's so powerful about group is you're there with a dozen other people with ADHD who kind of who may
Get
sound
it?
who like you. So here's the big thing. So you have these like a dozen mirrors looking back at you, but probably for the first time, what's not coming back to you, what's not being reflected, is judgment. It's full acceptance. And when you start to see that, like, wow, these people
They have the
who
same problems I do. They go through the same things.
and
Yeah.
successful people, right?
Hmm.
Who also think that they suck and
Major
think
people,
that,
CEOs, people that
yep,
don't even want you to know.
people
Right.
with PhDs, lawyers, doctors, right? And they had like, and they're all this imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
right? And when you start and you start to thinking, wow, they're being so hard on themselves. And then
Yeah.
you're like, wait a minute, I'm being hard on myself too.
How cool
And we
is
start,
that?
yeah.
That's
And when I
vulnerable,
It
right?
is, and we talk about how, all the skills we're trying to learn. It's like you can't just kind of force your way to learn these. Like you have to begin with
Yeah.
self-compassion.
Yeah.
Self-compassion is the way forward.
Yeah.
Self-acceptance doesn't mean you like it. Self-acceptance means you understand what it is that you're dealing with and you're doing
Yeah.
the things you got to do to move
And
forward.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, but I know I am, but I think ADHD people as they get adults, they're self-help junkies, right? We want to do better. Is that right? I mean, for me, it's true. I don't know about for you and your and people you work with.
Well, obviously, the people that come to me are seeking this, so my sample is going to be skewed towards the people who are seeking that. But I think there's also a lot of people. It's really interesting. I was so I'm a huge fan of the band Fish. I don't know if you
Yeah,
so
yeah.
in the kind of crowd that follow Fish, a lot of hippies, a lot of and I was there with my girlfriend a couple of weeks ago. We went and saw them for a weekend in Indiana, and we were both kind of commenting because she also has ADHD, and she's like,
Oh my God.
there's ADHD everywhere here, right?
Yeah.
And I think and we were talking to people who,
And humor's with it. Humor's great, isn't it?
right, but we're also talking to a lot of people who clearly are really struggling in life,
Yeah.
and are not very self-aware, and
Yeah.
are, and so it was kind of interesting because I had not been sort of on quote unquote tour with the band in a while, so I had done a 3-day run with them, and like I mean I love that scene. I find it so fun, um, but it was kind of just so it kind of showed like, oh wow, like there's a ton of people who like don't realize that there are things that they can do that can help them.
Little things. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So, first of all, you and I could talk forever, and I'd love to have you back on another topic because I really do. I think you and I connect in so many ways. It's really probably very sad, but anyway, I'm just joking.
No, it's
But
great. It's
a
I,
couple,
I I absolutely, and it's funny too because I find that people with ADHD, we tend to find each other, right? It's just like this
yeah,
just like
yeah.
magnet that it's like, it happens.
Somebody else like me or understands me or gets me because
Hmm.
like I said, like my husband is not ADHD, right? Bless his heart, he's got a son that's ADHD and a wife and he's still around. We've been married 11 years, so it's a good thing, right?
Hmm.
But I've got a couple of questions for you. Who
Okay.
inspires you?
Who inspires me? Well, I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown's work.
Mhm.
I mean, she probably out of all other sort of thought leaders, um, really has done the most to both personally help me heal my own shame and address some of my, I think, really sort of harmful cultural beliefs about what self worth entails. Right. And I remember this moment, I call it the moment that I was punched in the gut by Brene Brown.
Mhm.
I was walking, I was taking a break. I was by my office. It was around lunchtime. I put on my headphones. I went for a walk. I'm listening to one of her audiobooks, and she was talking about these guideposts for wholehearted living. And one of the guideposts is that just punched me in the gut was we have to let go of productivity as a measure of our self-worth. And I just remember literally stopping in my tracks and going, oh shit, I think I'm doing it wrong.
And you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if you're in a mess because you can get out of that mess.
Mhm.
But if you don't acknowledge the mess, you won't get out there. Right.
Yeah. And I refer to myself as a perfectionist in recovery,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
holy, like, when people wear this idea of like perfectionism as like a badge of honor, like perfectionism is crazy making.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
like, and we work with people on this idea that if you can do something to about 80% quality and it takes you an hour, or you can do something to 95% or above quality and it takes you
Yeah.
10 hours, do the 80% quality because that's all anyone wants anyways. And you have
Yeah.
to sort of put on the equivalent of it, like, the idea of like your beer goggles, right? You have to sort of put on your productivity goggles. Like what you think is 80% is actually going to feel like it's going to feel like 50% what it's
Yeah.
actually 80%, right?
Exactly.
And so because
Exactly.
it's not about what you think, it's about whatever the person who is going to be reviewing or grading or so it's
Yeah.
so one of the phrases I really like is good enough is great and perfect sex.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Look at people who have fame. It's not all what it's cracked up to be, right? There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
All right. So I said two questions. I
Okay.
got two more. Okay,
All right.
ready?
Let's do it.
So I had a counselor ask me this one time, and it was when I was going through my whole ADHD craziness as a single mom and everything. And the person said, it was when I was diagnosed, actually, right after that. But he said, looking back on your life, when were you the happiest? And for you, when is that?
Right now.
Oh my God. I just got chills. That was my answer.
It's so
That was my
last.
answer. I said, I have kind of gone through, I went through a sad divorce. I was a single mom for 10 years. But you know what? I'm doing what I love. And wow, I definitely know we're twins.
It's
What's your horoscope, by the way? We'll compare.
well,
I'm a Cancer. I'm just curious.
what the horoscopes would say I'm a Capricorn, but I took an astronomy class, and
We are twins.
well, and I'll tell you what, in my astronomy class, there was a question I remember that our professor would always ask us, like, what's the difference between astronomy and astrology? One is science, the other is science fiction, and he explained why actually.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a little interesting fact.
Yeah.
So,
And I just do it on the high level. I just I find it
right.
humorous, actually.
So, there are in the true, I guess, the zodiac, whatever, like with all the signs, there are actually 13, but astrology and fortune telling used to be big business, right? One of the 13th was Ophiuchus, and Ophiuchus was like the goddess of the underworld. So having a symbol or sign that represented death wasn't great for business. So they just decided to get rid of it because it was inconvenient.
Yeah.
So most people's astrological sign don't actually line up with their astronomical
Right. But do you like
sign.
to travel?
I'm getting into travel. Because I'm there's a lot of executive functioning that's involved in travel.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's actually one of the things I'm working on
Yeah.
is that.
You got to
It's actually,
plan it. You got to plan. Well,
yeah.
Capricorns like to train to travel, I know. And then also with Cancer, we live with our feelings on our sleeve. We have a passion of helping people, and we love people in general. And that's kind of that sums me up. And so I love that. So I had to ask you that. All right. So
It's just funny because I know there's some people who just really love this stuff, and I've like,
I just those two things. It just because we were so alike when you said it kind of gave me chills when you said right now, and that's exactly what I
well,
said to
and I'm
him.
going to tell you, and I think this is an important message to share with listeners too, that what has helped me, I think, be happier than I ever have been before, required me to go through the deepest part of hell than I ever had before. So,
Absolutely.
so I was officially divorced in February. I had asked my ex for a divorce January 2020. Well, we know what happened in 2020. March comes COVID. We lived together for that entire year without telling our
Wow.
son what was happening.
Wow. Wow.
It was one of the hardest periods of my life,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
And because I knew that I was like, and it's not like we had a bad uh marriage.
Yeah.
We weren't connected. Like we were just so different. I'm like, I'm not happy, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to go out and do stuff, and she's very, very routine and
Yeah.
likes to go to bed at 8:30.
You
And
know,
like,
I always say when you're dating, really, you can read our journals. I have advice for that, but you've got to be connected. And my
yeah.
first marriage, I was divorced 20 years ago. I was a single mom for 10 years, but I thought I had the perfect life.
Mm,
And my marriage fell apart, and everything went away. It was awful. And here I'm stuck with, not stuck, but I had this 1-year-old little baby and a business, and it was like, ah, and but I look on that, and the saddest times of my life are one of the ones that I appreciate because it makes me who I am today.
mm. No,
Right.
that's yeah.
You know,
That's
yeah,
there's a
I
lot we
lost.
can if we allow ourselves to lean in to the struggle and get curious and be vulnerable and do the work,
Yeah.
like it's worth it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
so worth it.
And let me just let me make a comment. My ex-husband, when we got a divorce, I never knew, but he was abused as a child by family members. So what I did is I turned it to good. And I did research. I wanted to understand child abuse. I really wanted to understand what kids went through, because there's a reason that these things happen.
Mhm.
It's displaced anger. There's a lot of things that go along with it. But I got on the board. I went to CASA, which is court appointed special advocates to help children in foster care. And I was on their board for 12 years as their president and vice president. You
Mm.
turn it to good,
Yeah. I
right?
love the
So
idea of you make your mess your message.
that's right. That's right. So, all right, here's my last question. All
All right,
right.
let's do
So
it.
let's say, all right, Eric, you got to go to that meeting. You got to pitch that. You got to speak. You're not there. You're having one of those really bad off days. You're just not having game on. You get in your car. What is the message, or excuse me, what is the artist, the genre, or the song that you put on that gets you going?
So, it's probably a song that I'm guessing like 95% of your listeners have never heard of because it's from the band Fish,
Okay.
and it is it's one of their instrumental songs, and it's called "You Enjoy Myself," and
Love it.
I just love it. It brings you through a whole sort of emotional journey. I mean, it's like a
Yeah.
20-minute song, and it's just
Awesome.
amazing.
Music is, I always say it's powerful. It can bring you up, it can bring you down. It can keep you calm. It can do a lot of things. And so I love music. I embrace it. And yeah, so, and if you're listening to this and if you have kids, two things you can do for them is get them into sports in some kind of athletic training, whether it's tennis or golf or whatever, and music, because music does the other part of the brain that it can help them. So anyway, listen, it's been such a delight. I've had so much fun with you today. I'd love to have you back on another topic. And so, like I said, I felt like I have a twin brother out there I didn't know I had. So, anyway, this has been a blast. Thank you so much. I graciously appreciate your time.
Thanks, Angela.